Good evening and welcome to the Varietal Show. If you've never been here before, you're watching Varietal Literature, which is a cozy place on the internet for narrative. And what we do here on Thursday nights is called Lit Games mostly. And what that is basically we're going to play some writing-centric tabletop RPG. Tonight's a solo journaling game, so if you've never heard of one of those, it's pretty much what it sounds like, but you can join in the chat and give prompts and ideas of how we should play the game, write the story, and yeah, we'll see what we come up with by the end. If you're not watching live, though, down in the description below, there will be timestamps. And I did have to run here, that's why I'm a little out of breath, because I realized I'd forgot to bring my dice over. Give me a second. There we go. Anyways, yeah, this is a game where we write. I'll just show where we write. The if that interests you, or if you like to help give prompts and see if I can work them in and whatever else. But nonetheless, I'm going to carry on into the description of the game. But I will say this, whenever we have a little burst of popularity, which we did on my last stream, which was my fairy tale streams and folklore streams, really more folklore than fairy tales, despite the name. This isn't that. So if you're here to listen to somebody tell a story by fireside, that happens Tuesdays. Don't worry, that hasn't gone away. This one's about writing and more interaction with the audience and so on. You may like it, but just so you know what you're getting into. I see that GS is in the chat, but not before Witchery was, with a good clap. GS says, good evening. I thought this was an ad. Yeah, I think that is probably going to hurt me a bit. The cover of this game looks like an ad, which is to their credit, but when you're trying to sell it on YouTube, I think a lot of people are going to think, why am I being shown an ad for a weird Airbnb? Witchery says, I really need to work out of how to fix my YouTube's time. It's an hour behind me, and for lives, that's annoying. That's weird. You would think it would match up with you. I mean, is it think you're in a different time zone? Witchery says, join chat. Backseat drive. Indeed. Okay, let's get to the game. The game's really simple to explain, so it shouldn't take too long. This is on the more lighthearted. Some of the stuff we've done so far has been a little on the more horror side. This one I wanted to be a little more lighthearted. This part of the show is called Lit Games, which stands for Literature Games, which is just the part of the show where I take a Google Doc and I start writing a story based on prompt structures given to us by solo tabletop RPGs, lyric games. A whole bunch of them are on itch.io if you've ever skimmed around the corners of that on its tabletop section. They have 30,000 different names, because if there's one thing we millennials love to do, it's give things names that already had names, but 10 different ones, and then be really precise about it. Don't know why, but we do that, and so it's one of those. Tonight, I think the more technical name for it would be a solo journaling game, which means in its simplest form, it's about rolling a dice and getting a prompt, and then trying to write something based on that prompt. And we're going to try and form a story. And I already have a premise for the character, which I will tell you after I briefly explain the mechanics. Okay. So this is the cover of our game. It's called Scare B&B, which is an excellent name. I'd like to think that this is probably how the game was created. It started with the name. But actually, when I posted this on Mastodon, if you haven't already, you should join the Fediverse. It's nice. Somebody there said their friend wrote this, so I don't know if you're in the chat or you're watching. Hello, and I hope I do your game justice. It's by Jacqueline Brick. Jacqueline did something very funny, I will say, on their page. for this game, they put some quotes from people who enjoyed the game, but they put a quote there from somebody who seems to basically misunderstand how itch.io works. They're like, why are you charging money for something made in a game jam? Which is very weird logic. Anyways. There are some questions here that they want us to answer. I will maybe address these a little bit. I'm not going to get too much into them. This is stuff that helps you build your character, but generally I find the stream works better when we just sort of dive in and build our character as we go. If you guys have any opinions on some of this stuff, though, that's where chat comes in. So, like, I have a structure of a story premise where we're going to start in a proper bed and breakfast that was run by an elderly couple. But exactly where it is, what it looks like, how it was built, and what its surroundings are, I haven't really defined any of that. So they give you little prompts here, like, for example, where is your haunted B&B located? Rocky seaside, a chic city, a remote forest village, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, I think something a little more remote will be more fun. But I'll go with what the chat wants to do. And a name, I already gave us a name, Martha, but if you guys have a better name, you're welcome to recommend it. And all you really do in this game is you roll d20s. And if you're dork enough to go onto indie game sites or watch a stream about indie games, you probably have a d20. D20 is the core dice for modern D&D, 5th edition systems, and kind of before 5th edition, but really 5th edition for sure. Pathfinder, all of that uses a d20. It's a 20-sided dice. I think there's somebody explained once the math on it and why it's a good dice to use, but I don't know. You roll this and you get a prompt about the people that are coming, the mundane and the supernatural events that occur, and you are a ghost. Or we are a ghost, rather. We are writing from the perspective of a ghost who is trying to create a good experience in the Airbnb despite being a ghost. Okay. So, like, just to give you an example of what this is going to look like, you're supposed to roll a d20 for each row here. I'm just going to roll 3 at once because I have an enormous amount of them. That's a 9, a 2, and a 5. So then we go down the list here, and a 9 is the excited tourist with the Groupon. Number 2, the HVAC goes on the fritz, leaving an unpleasant metallic smell in the air. And number 5, a guest is gone for several hours and cannot remember anything but the taste of a hibiscus tea. And basically what we'll do, and they have an example down here, is we are doing this the week before Halloween. There's lots of activity, and we basically will be filling in for each day of the week before Halloween in entry. We're not going to get that far in this one stream, but the way that they put it in is they give you an itinerary you can use if you want, about stuff to focus on. So like the first day would be the new arrivals and something about old habits. Anyway, it's all just prompt systems. At this point, you guys know it works. One thing I am very happy with, they have given us a list of names that we can roll on or just pick, which is lovely because names are definitely the thing that comes the slowest. Yeah, and that's about it. It's just rolling, getting prompts, and writing. So I'm going to read you the little opening premise that I have for our character, and then we're going to see what we can create. Whoop. Martha was a real estate flipper that bought out an old popular bed and breakfast from an aging man. She presented herself and her friends as small entrepreneurs to the aging owners, promised to care for their legacy, then just added the property to her stable of misrepresented Airbnb flipped hovels, which I probably could have phrased better, but in other words, she just buys them and then turns them into Airbnbs. that aren't very well cared for. She was rude. She ignored bed bugs. She served expired food. And when Martha was installing hidden CCTV cameras, her ladder inexplicably snapped shut, throwing her down to her death. Now Martha is bound to this earth until she can finally fulfill her promise to the deceased former owners and repair the reputation of the Lakeville B&B. And again, it doesn't need to be called that. I just sort of threw a name in. So, basically, we'll roll and we'll see that. And then there's just a premise of a ghost who's trying to save their soul by finally being a good host. Airbnb, the hotel you pay to clean yourself. I did use Airbnb. I guess I won't be specific on the trips I take, but I did use an Airbnb, and I really enjoyed it for the most part, but there definitely was a lot of like, oh, I guess this is on me now, isn't it? Because they really didn't do anything. They are supposed to pay to clean in between, and sometimes they don't. Still, it came out half the price of a hotel, and I think it was still better. We're Martha, that's correct. Okay. Anyways. October 25th. Let's find out our arrivals. I did a sample roll, but I'm going to do our real roll now. Okay. Number 1 is 9. 9 is the excited tourist with Groupon. Oh, wait, we already got that. Picking a different dice. 20. There we go. Someone too wealthy for their own good. Sure. Okay. Now we'll do number 9 for the other one. A mundane event. A parent shouts at their child in public. And the last one is a 14. Witchery says the Groupon person really wanted to exist. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I don't have any immediate ideas about it. And then the supernatural event is any and all animals on the property go berserk at exactly 3 a.m. Okay. Now, I should say there isn't a lot of restrictions on how you want to play this. If we wanted to be more spooky and creepy, we could. But I'm sort of leaning towards the more Casper the Friendly Ghost misunderstood events. Now, I do think it's true that we should still have the ghosts be otherwise invisible and so on, outside of maybe phenomenal events where they're seen for a moment. But you can get away with that in Airbnbs, because in Airbnbs you rarely see the hosts. They just tell you how to unlock the door, and that's about it. Okay. Witchery says the witching hour, correct. GS says animals on the property. Who leaves pets at an Airbnb? Okay, good point, but that's why we have a property. That's why we have prompt structures. We got to make that make sense for our story, right? So, I mean, the obvious thing is maybe this is out in farmland and nearby animals. Yeah, Witchery says it could be one of those Airbnb on a ranch or something, or wild animals. Well, I'll leave it up to the chat here, or I'll flip a coin if chat has no opinion. Do you want to do it as a ranch, or do you want to do, I don't have a ton of experience on a ranch, I will tell you that now, or do you want to do it that it's near sort of dense forests that are full of wild animals? And I only mention the ranch thing because I can't promise authenticity because I don't have a ton of experience with it. Anyways, chat, that's up to you. Dense forest, ranch. What do you want to do? Not the dressing. Well, maybe the dressing. Maybe it's a ranch that also does a ranch dressing. We got to vote for forest. Gia says I'm clueless on ranches. Okay. Okie dokie dokie. Someone too wealthy for their own good. Witchery, who I believe does have something amounting to a ranch, says, you strange people who don't know about farms. Yeah. I mean, I grew up around farmland for sure in every place I've lived, but I never actually lived on one. I rode by it on my bike. Any and all animals on the property go berserk at exactly 3 a.m. Okay. Someone too wealthy for their own good. I see two directions we could go. Yeah, Witchery's kind of anticipating it here. Like, the temptation is to go sort of old school royalty, right? So, like, Lord Fluffington or something. But we could, that sort of modern day too wealthy for their own good is like the child of Elon Musk or something. And they always have absolutely insane names, right? Some pretentious name. Like, well, I don't know. Let's see what people want. But why don't we say it's sort of a trust fund kid who is trying to what's something pretentious? Why would they go to an Airbnb? It's got to be like trying to find themselves or something like that, or get in touch with the country folk. Witchery says, my family had a farm. I live in the heart of a bread basket. Lol. Wow. That sounds interesting. I have no interesting stories about where I lived. I mostly lived in suburbs. And let me tell you, as anyone from the suburbs will tell you, if you're from the suburbs, you want to leave the suburbs. Okay. Any and all animal... Zeklon R3... Jones was the son of CompuCon LTD CompuCon Ltd CEO Jeremy Jones. Elon Dusk, Witchery says. That's frankly a cooler name than his. Martha could not help but wonder why such a wealthy young man would choose to spend a week in this broken, old, miserable house. Out in the thick forests of the country. This was a boy. Yeah, good call. You've got it nailed there, Witchery. What if the kid's trying to become a poet or a painter or something? So, without going into specifics, there's someone I used to know who had a partner at one point who I was not a huge fan of. And at one point, they were like just living that poor, struggling writer lifestyle. They had a trust fund. Their family was in a business that I won't name, but was quite wealthy. And they had their own free apartment in one of the most expensive districts of Vancouver. And then they would sell themselves as a person who was a struggling writer. And I have held in my heart bitterness about this for years. So that is the origin of great stories, I think. Okay. This was a boy who could afford private planes to penthouses in Dubai. Martha, having only recently discovered she was spiritually leashed, Witchery says, I'd be so happy with a free place to live. Honest to God, I cannot say my feelings about that on YouTube. And with an allowance. Like, at no point did they even have bills. It's just... what it really is, they weren't really doing anything wrong. What it really is wealth is diluting. There are people that are, frankly, quite wealthy, but because there are people wealthier than them, they believe they're poor. Martha, having only recently discovered she was spiritually leashed to this miserable, I think I already used miserable for this, to this, yes, decaying project of some now deceased old man really had no idea what sort of services a fellow of his high stature might expect. She retyped the message in the app 3 times. In order? Wait, let's do this differently. She typed... I got a different way of approaching this. She decided the best move would be to message and ask. First draft. Hello, sire. Zeklon. What a surprise to see such a prestigious name at our humble hovel. When you are in attending of us, will you be needing any Martha paused and whispered her words back to her. Catching typos and realizing this was a terrible message. Martha, you gotta be cooler than this. She mumbled to herself. From the other side of the closet, because if you'll remember, we had a child screaming from the other side of a closet. One of the... Oh, let's get a surname. Oh yeah, give me a surname. I don't even need to think. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. The Macmillan. Macmillan family's youngest. Screamed and began crying. The child hollered to their mother that the closet was glowing and making whispering noises again. Soon, the whole place and all the guests were awake. Martha rubbed what was once her forehead. Forgetting that despite her mostly transparent form, bits of her would slip through the veil of mortal senses then terrify the guests. Holly's House is here. Hello, Holly's House. Yeah, we're playing Martha the Ghost, who was cursed to take care of an Airbnb until she repairs the reputation that it had held before when she bought it. Martha sighed at the thought that she may never escape her punishment. Her sigh, unfortunately, shuddered the walls and echoed like an uncanny howl. Things were different now that she was a wailing spirit. What followed was a stampede of guests down the stairs and out to their cars. After a moment, Martha returned to her message, deleting it, then starting over. Second draft. cooler this time. Aliso says, I can see the Nancy Drew title now. Nancy Drew in the case of the missing deposit. Yo, Zeklon. You're gonna really groove with the what's the word? Is it like cabin core, folk core? It's on the tip of my tongue. It's a word that I've heard before. With the cat, I'm just gonna go with the cottagecore. What am I doing? The cottagecore vibe of this pad. GS says cottagecore. Thank you, GS. You're the delay let me get there first. You're gonna really groove with the cottagecore vibe of this pad. Is there any items or services y'all are gonna be beefing without? Martha stared at her message. She could not tell if this was cool. Her phone, one of the only items she could consistently interact with after her death. Just as we can tell, it's not. Underlined several words as ungrammatical. She felt like this was a good sign. She was about to send the message when the braying and barking of the forest burst into her solitude up there, floating in the second story closet. Was it 3 a.m. already? Time passes differently in the eternal realm. Got some recommendations for words there. Screeching, hooting. This was not an uncommon thing. Though it didn't happen every night. Martha took it as a sign and deleted the message finally writing. Will you be needing anything specific in your stay? It was boring. But she was boring. Her death was the most important, was the most interesting thing about her life. She sent it. Okay. October 26th. Let's roll another prompt. That took me perhaps too long. I'll try to involve you guys more. Okay. For those who weren't here when we first explained it, there are 3 columns here. We roll a dice 3 times. The number we get gives us our prompt. Two, 8, and 11. So 2 is a couple celebrating their 10th, 20th, or 30th anniversary. So right there, you guys can tell me some stuff about the couple. For example, what anniversary it is, how well their relationship's going, things like that, why they chose to come out here. 8. Someone has to go to urgent care with the sprain, break, or food poisoning. Okay. Um... 11. Okay, so I rolled an 11, and it says jack-o'-lantern appears in every room at midnight, and that's some good classic spooky. But I just noticed that number 10 above it is, I quote, "Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads begins playing on a device at full volume and does not stop until the device is turned off completely." I'm sorry, but that's what we're doing. I realize that's not in the spirit of the game, but that's an amazing prompt. We're not leaving that one on the floor. Psycho Killer. Qu'est-ce que c'est? And Talking Heads is one of those bands where I know several songs from them. Probably nearly an album's worth, but I never know it's them. And I think that's probably a consequence of when I grew up. Because, like, I was born in the 80s, but only just. You know, I was barely conscious by the time the 80s ended. And the concept of 80s music mostly came to me as stuff I heard as I walked around malls and stuff when I was a kid. And so I learned these songs, but I didn't learn who they were. I wasn't buying Talking Heads albums. By the time I was buying albums, I was buying like Sum 41 albums. And Queen, you know, old stuff like that, but not the 80s. That was not cool when I was growing up. It had its time. It was all grunge music when I grew up, frankly. Okay, so this is a tough set of prompts to put together. Do we have any opinions on this couple? I don't have any immediate inspiration, so I'm going to give the chat a chance to give me some ideas of what might be the case with this couple. And maybe they can have something to do with the spray and break or food poisoning. I have something I could do that, but I do want to keep pursuing this rich kid thing. He's going to show up today. Okay, keep forgetting his name, and it probably doesn't matter. Zeklon R3 Jones, okay. Went too far again. Zeklon arrived late. In a oh, good idea, Witchery. Witchery says, give him the rich kid food poisoning. He's never had to cook for himself before. Zeklon arrived late. In a Rolls-Royce Phantom towing a covered oh, I like that idea, GS. GS says it's their 10th anniversary and they fancy themselves as psychic mediums or something. Okay. Because that kind of connects to this idea of, like, he's trying to be spiritual and maybe he talks to them and they invoke it a bit. And I do sort of like the idea of, like, a medium and they're like, what is going on? And it's like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your visit? Genera showed up. Hello, Genera. Good to see you. Thanks for watching. Zeklon arrived late in a Rolls-Royce Phantom towing a covered trailer. He exited by the back only after the driver pulled open his door. The boy was dressed in the kind of clothing made to appear tattered and well worn, but anybody with an eye for fashion could recognize the shirt alone was an $8,000 original. His fashion was that of oh god, what's a good way to put it? Evocative of the 1,000 belts of Johnny Depp. Oh yeah, Yee. Yeah. Or the flock, or the ill-fitting linens of, oh, what's his name? Kinda runs a cult. Kind of a creep. He was in Morbius. I can't think of his name. Someone's gonna tell me in chat. Oh, scarves. The 1,000 scarves of Johnny Depp. Okay. He was in Morbius. He was Morbius. Can't think of his name right now. To me, he's Babyface from Fight Club, and he's rarely been more. Or the ill-fitting linens of whatever his name is. Someone's gonna tell me it. Pricey. Well, Jared Leto, there it is. Well-designed tatters. He smiled at the sun. Oh. Hello, Ain? Aine? Ain? Tell me if I'm getting your name wrong. Just got here and I'm so confused as to what's going on in the game. Here's the quick version. It's a solo journaling game, so you occupy a character and you write stuff from their perspective. The perspective that we're writing from is a ghost Martha, who was doomed to take care of an Airbnb that she was rude and did not take care of in life, despite her promises that she would. And each day we roll d20 dice, one on each table, people, Monday events, and supernatural events, to get random prompts, and we try to work them into little journal entries. And we sort of build stories and characters out of that for about an hour and see how far we get. Also, chat participates. I do the writing, but as you guys recommend stuff, I try to work it in. The gist of this one, so far, we're 2 days into it. Not 2 day real life, 2 in-game days into it, is a very rich person who we've loosely modeled off like a child of Elon Musk or something, has shown up to this Airbnb. Rhymes with rain. Okay. Good. Also, thank you for dropping by and giving us a shot. Okay. Yeah, it's just me basically playing solo tabletop RPGs of various sorts, and then chat kind of drops in as they have ideas. I try to work it in. And then we read it back all at once after about an hour and a half. See what we came up with. Sometimes it's terrible, sometimes it's great. Mostly it's funny. Whether it intends to be or not. He smiled at the morning sun and said, "Driver, this is where the earth truly bleeds its salt. Isn't it?" Certainly, sir. The driver mumbled, "Will you be requiring my assistance retrieving your motorcycle from the trailer?" "Certainly not. After all, if I couldn't roll my own bike out, oh, I did. Thank you, Ian. If I couldn't roll my own bike out of a trailer, how could I ever truly tap into the poet spirits of oh god, what do rich 20-something white guys think?" I gotta be careful here because there's a lot of writers that they do like that I like, but I think they misunderstand. How about this? The one that they all just have no concept about. Shagabär. The driver paused, raised an eyebrow, and nodded. "Naturally, sir." Holly's House says, I hope Martha ruins his hideous $8,000 shirt. Yeah, well, I mean, he might, because our prompt involved, what was it again? Okay, so we have a couple celebrating their 10th, 20th, or 30th anniversary, and GS recommended to be their 10th anniversary, and they fancy themselves mediums. Someone has to go to urgent care with a sprain break or food poisoning, and we said it should be food poisoning because he never cooks his own food. And then I said, Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads, which is a prompt. These are all prompts from the game. Begins playing on a device at full volume and does not stop until the device is turned off completely. Okay, I'm going to have to time skip a bit because, this will be too long. I have 2 more characters to introduce and a conflict to resolve. The rest of the afternoon was Martha trying not to scare... how do I put this? Trying to anticipate his needs when his back was turned. She had to be so careful as a ghost, because even simple feelings could shake and shudder the mortal world. Sometime in the afternoon... Oh, good. We can go back to the name page. What's a good name for somebody who fancies themselves a medium? Mandy and Tiffany? Could that be the couple? Sure. Mandy and Tiffany. Sometime in the afternoon, the other visitors, or the other guests, turned up in their simple hatchback. Mandy and Tiffany had specified they were celebrating their 10th anniversary and had heard rumors this place was haunted. Apparently, they fancied themselves mediums. That is how you spell rumors, you American program. GS says that's a cool concept, that Martha's basic emotions are amplified to the mortal world. I guess I've always felt like that was kind of the case for ghosts. They were sort of emotions given form. Apparently they fancied themselves mediums. Under no circumstances could Martha risk that reputation. This was supposed to be a cozy cottage. What are some quirks that Tiffany and Martha could have, guys? Surely you've known people like this. Something they do with their hands, or a ritual they go through when they get into a new room, or whatever else. Let me know if there's anything that comes to mind for you folks. Genera says never understood the or versus R thing. Ayn says, where are you from, by the way? It made me wonder when you chastised the American program. I should say I'm being sort of tongue-in-cheek. Language is very arbitrary, but I'm from Canada. It's Genera says never understood the OR or the OUR thing, because it doesn't really matter. They're historical relics of various language forms and paths that were taken. And some of them are just as silly as, like, one book didn't print it that way, but the book was very influential in one area. Language is ultimately a dance, an interpretive dance between two people. Or in this case, several people, but doesn't really matter. Ayn says maybe they want to cleanse this new space whenever they enter one. That's a good idea. How do you do that? I'm not really up on the supernatural rituals. Oh yeah, mispronouncing herb names. Yeah. Like why is it cilantro here and coriander in the UK? I don't know. It's the same plant. I have no idea. This was supposed to be a cozy cottage. Not some fearful, shadowy place. I mean, the one I do know because of Joe, who's a friend of mine who's Cree, is smudge, but I mean, that's sort of a different kind of purifying. But we could use that if nothing else comes to mind. Yeah, sage is, as I understand it, is smudge. It's like a stick that you bind to a stick. It's a bundle of herbs you sort of smoke around. Yeah, exactly. Ayn says, I wouldn't use white sage unless you're native, though you're asking for trouble. Exactly. That's why I want to pick something maybe a little more neutral. Thankfully, well, the new couple arrived. Jess says this chat knows. Yes. I suspect in no small part because of the folklore bend to things. You can use other herbs. Juniper is popular one in Celtic practices. Let's do juniper. Celtic sounds right. I sort of had in the back of my head this might be an Irish B&B. So that would fit with this. Thankfully, the new guests busied themselves with burning a bundle of juniper. You can use rosemary. I love rosemary. Although my favorite herb, from a cooking perspective, I don't have one otherwise, is thyme, which is not the most interesting, but I think it's one of the best. Maybe second in line is tarragon, but tarragon's so much more specific. And waving the smoke about their room. Something about this there. Sorry, I just realized I wasn't looping the music. Hopefully I didn't hit something that is Oh, singing bowls and wind chimes. Singing bowls are so much fun. I only know them in the context of meditation. Can't remember where it was. I was at a temple and we did meditation and they had a bowl that sang. It's very cool. Genera says, I personally love cooking with basil. The problem with basil, though, is unless it's fresh, it's like a different thing. But I've been lucky enough to have fresh basil this summer. Although it's all dying now, so I'm trying to use it. Ain has anticipated. Oh no, not a ghost sneeze. Oh, GS said that. Okay, Martha sneezes and gives her what amplified away, blows dishes off the table. This was fine enough. However, something about their incense smoke really bothered. Forgot my own character's name, which is not a surprise. If you're a regular viewer of the stream, Rory has genuine problems remembering any name of anything. Really bothered Martha. She felt repulsed. Actually, it repulsed her and stung at her very spirit. She avoided the room and stuck to dusting upstairs. Sometime in the evening, Zekalon had apparently when the smoke had dispersed from the lower floor. Is that snot or ectoplasm? You decide. Who says it's different? Zekalon had apparently made what is something he can do a bad job? Had apparently made a dinner. Again, this should have been done by Martha, but time sometimes, it's not the best use of that sentence. But time often travels differently for a ghost. It was a shame, too, because it was clear the boy had never much cooked. Why would he have? He was a wealthy nobody. No, what am I saying? He was a trust fund kid. The result, a sort of mac and cheese with fresh picked herbs that Martha was reasonably certain was just dandelions and crabgrass Come on. Oh, weird. Why is my R is making a G? That's weird. Hopefully that's not a consistent thing. Let me try that somewhere else. Did my keyboard break? You know, it's just this. It's working on other things. That's so weird. Zekalon burning Teflon. Oh, okay, now it's working. There we go. That was so weird. I was clicking R and it was just putting another G, and the G was still a G, but it was only doing it here and only for a brief moment. It was just dandelions and crabgrass from the front lawn. My keyboard is haunted. That's correct. For that reason, we must end the stream immediately. No. maybe a haunted keyboard will finish more stories and get them off to publishers. The results, he had seemingly fried the noodles with some water and the wilting bitter greens in a Teflon pan, as people have recommended. The result of this ill-advised approach to making mac and cheese was a meal flecked with the dark chips of non-stick coating from the overheated pan. A bitter, mushy slop seasoned with chemical chunks. Ain says Teflon fumes are bad news. Yeah, there you go. It has the opposite effect of smudging. You burn your Teflon and you bring in poltergeists. A bitter mushy slop seasoned with chemical chunks. Tiffany and what was the other one's name? Ain says, I know they can kill birds. Yes, they can. It's also why you're not really supposed to put them in ovens, because ovens can get hot enough to do so. I forgot my own character's name. Tiffany and Mandy, that's it. Tiffany and Mandy accepted the dishes, but upon tasting it, Mandy, a brunette woman with a round, inviting face, said, "Oh, delicious. But before we start, I should make sure nothing haunts the room." Tiffany perked up at this, turned her gaunt but handsome face to her partner, and with a forced smile said, "Oh yes, you'll be needing help with that." The two ladies scurried out of the room and came back with a bound bundle each that let off wisps of how about threads, long fraying threads of pale smoke. They began to move in a kind of dance and chanted words that seemed to be made up. I had not seen them do any of this when they were alone in their room, and I could only gather they were delaying having to eat this terrible food. You guys are finishing stories for me is what you guys are doing, which is great. I would have laughed at the whole scene were it not likely to shake the place in terrible, terrifying ways. But the smoke, it began to sting again. And I finally realized how it was affecting me. Now, I could... Oh, why did I change to I? This has always been third person. Martha. When did I change it? Well, whatever. You get your first drafts. She did not understand how, given her ethereal form, but she suddenly knew she would sneeze. She turned to run for the window, holding her arm to her face. But as she passed over the dining table, she could not hold it. As it was with all things stuck between the realms, the sneeze was no mere sneeze. In one shuddering, horrible roar, a gale of snot. I mean, I know a gale is a wind thing, but I like the phrase a gale of snot, even if it doesn't make sense. Whatever, it's my stream. A gale of snot shot at the table, tossing away the ladies' meals untouched as they were. And turning Zeklon's half-empty plate up against his face. A deluge? Yeah, a deluge is probably better. You guys are right. Fine, I'll be grammatical. It's not a fun time. Turning Zaglon's half-empty plate up against his face. There was a moment of silence. Then everyone began to scream. Instinctively, I tried... there's the I again. Martha tried to calm them. But as before, it only came through as cacophonic whispers that tore at their sanity. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, Martha said. Tiffany fell to the ground, holding her ears, and looked up with wild eyes, crying out, "What terrible curses are you uttering, spirit?" Mandy grabbed her arm and held up an amulet in shifting directions. Oops. Oh my god, it's been an hour and 20 minutes. What? I have an ending in mind, but it would take me way too long to get to. I do like these ideas. GS says, when they're on the toilet with terrible diarrhea at 3 a.m., the forest creatures attack as the guests run screaming, pants down. I really like that idea. Ayn says, what if a bird flew in the open kitchen window and dropped dead in the kitchen and the bird haunts them? Yeah, we could have a bird hauntings. Just trying to think of the quickest path to some conclusion. We could just call it there too. I also like the idea of them having like a seance, and the seance being mostly Mandy trying to get a good Airbnb score. But I'm not sure I can get any of those in. I mean, maybe I could get that last one in if I was really simple about it. I guess maybe I'll do that. GS says the Teflon bird death. Yeah. His cooking killed most of the birds in the area. It's interesting because there is a whole bunch of mythology. If you guys listen on Tuesdays, it's folklore. But there's a whole bunch of mythology about places where birds drop dead. And traditionally, it was always like a sign of... Like in the case of Avernus in Greek. I know Avernus is a thing in D&D, but long before that, Avernus was a volcano near Athens, basically. And birds would die flying over it. It had a big boiling lake. I mean, as we understand now, we know what it is. It's sort of a poisoned water. It's sulfur fumes. It's things like that. But for them, that was a sign that that was the entrance to the underworld. So yeah, I mean, the idea that if his cooking killed all the birds in the area and that shows this place is cursed, that's hilarious. I just don't know where I can fit it in without being here for like another hour, which I don't think this will remain entertaining that much longer. So I'm trying to think of what the quickest path in. I think I could probably just fit all of that in. I think I know how I could do it. To Martha's surprise, everyone didn't run away, but instead, the two ladies talked the terrified boy into joining their seance. The seance. Martha had done seances before, but this was the first time being on the other side of it. At first, she resolved to give no further evidence. At first, she resolved to give no further evidence of her presence. But as it turns out, a seance is something of a spam call. She tried to fold laundry, and their calls were like ringing in her ears. She tried to polish the fixtures, but the buzz of their humming was relentless. She had no choice. After being pestered for the better part of an hour, she finally floated down and said, "How can I help you?" "Oh, great and terrible spirit, I ask you now, what binds you to this place?" Yeah, exactly, Ain. We've been trying to contact you about your car's extended warranty. Tiffany said, "That's personal. And I would prefer to keep this professional." Martha said with some indignation, though remaining aware of her obligation to be a good host. I mean, if a seance is like a spam call, yeah, exactly. Totally a spam call. Everyone at the table sort of stuttered at this. Tiffany continued, "What is your profession?" Listen, I just need to know if anyone needs anything. I apologize for the problems earlier. Do you guys like tea in the morning? Martha tried. Spirit, are you bound to host guests forever? Tiffany asked. If that's all, Martha said, dodging the question she feared most. Please remember to give a good rating on the app if you've enjoyed your visit. Spirit, is there a love you long for us to reach? Tiffany said, nope, I just hope you all enjoy your visit. And Martha continued. Zeklon finally cut in and said, there are a bunch of dead birds outside. If you're like a ghost host extraordinaire, why can I not remember how this is spelled? Oh, that was correct. Okay. How can you not just keep dead birds off the lawn? He tisked. I think, sir, Martha said, restraining her rage, your experiments with the Teflon pan might have killed all the birds. Oh, so now everything's my fault. Zeklon said with an eye roll. No. I'm giving this dump 1 star. Ghost. Ain says yes, it is. Ghost. Tiffany added quickly. Do you carry guilt for how your curse has killed the birds above this place? I didn't kill any birds. Oh, she seems to be in denial. Maybe this is what keeps her here. Tiffany whispered loudly. Do you carry guilt? Yeah, that's it. Do you carry guilt? Spirit? I would if I killed all those birds. Zeklon muttered. Well, Martha shouted and shook the windows. Then I guess you must feel... then you must feel, apparently I misspelled, I probably misspelled lots of things, Aiden. Then I guess you must feel, Martha shouted and shook the windows. Then I guess you must feel tremendous guilt because your terrible cooking killed all the nice birds. Well, as one might expect, this shuddering, terrifying outburst ran off the guests. And their later reviews reflected their terror. Martha would have to host another year. There you go. God, we typed a lot. Okay. Ugh. Sorry, my light did a weird thing there. It's haunted. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know the results of the stream. This one time we played a game called Scare B&B. Scare B&B is a game, I think you can largely get it for free on itch.io, where we basically were a ghost who's trying to host the week leading up to Halloween, and trying to host an Airbnb. And I created a little backstory here, which I'll read as well, and then we'll go into the story that we wrote with the stream, and hopefully you enjoy it, because it is on the sillier side. Martha was a real estate flipper that bought out an old popular bed and breakfast from an aging man. She presented herself and her friends as small entrepreneurs to the aging owners, promised to care for their legacy, then just added the property to her stable of misrepresented Airbnb flipped hovels. She was rude. She ignored bed bugs. She served expired food. When Martha was installing hidden CCTV cameras, her ladder inexplicably snapped shut, throwing her to her death. Now Martha is bound to this earth until she can finally fulfill her promise to the deceased former owners and repair the reputation of the Lakeville B&B. First day. Zeklin R3 Jones was the son of CompuCon Limited CEO Jeremy Jones. Martha could not help but wonder why such a wealthy young man would choose to spend a week in this broken old miserable house out in the thick forests of the country. This was a boy who could afford private planes to penthouses in Dubai. Martha, having only recently discovered she was spiritually leashed to this decaying project of some now deceased old man, really had no idea what sort of services a fellow of his high stature might expect. She decided the best move would be to message first and ask. Her first draft went as such. Hello, Sire Zeklon. What a surprise to see such a prestigious name at our humble hovel. When you are in attending of us, will you be needing any... Martha paused and whispered her words back to her, catching typos and realizing this was a terrible message. Martha, you gotta be cooler than this, she mumbled to herself. Then, from the other side of the closet door, one of her current guests, the McMillan family's youngest specifically, screamed and began crying. The child hollered to their mother that the closet was glowing and making whispering noises again. Soon the whole place and all the guests were awake. Martha rubbed what was once her forehead, forgetting that despite her mostly transparent form, bits of her would slip through the veil of mortal senses, then terrify the guests. Martha sighed at the thought that she may never escape her punishment. Her sigh, unfortunately, shuttered walls and echoed like an uncanny howl. Things were different now that she was a wailing spirit. What followed was a stampede of guests down the stairs and out to their cars. After a moment, Martha returned to typing her message, choosing to delete it, then starting over, doing it cooler this time. Her second draft was, Yo, Zeklon! You're gonna really groove with the cottagecore vibe of this pad. Is there any items, services y'all are gonna be beefing with out? Martha stared at her message. She could not tell if this was cool. Her phone, one of the only items she could consistently interact with after her death, underlined several words as being ungrammatical. She felt like this was a good sign, though, for being cool. She was about to send the message when the braying, screeching, hooting, and barking of the forest burst her solitude up there, floating in the second-story closet. Oh, was it 3 a.m. already? Time does pass differently in the internal realm. This was not an uncommon thing, the animals howling at 3 a.m., though it didn't happen every night. Martha took it as a sign and deleted the message, finally writing, Will you be needing anything specific in your stay? It was boring, but she was boring. Her death was the most interesting thing about her life, so she sent it. The next day. Zeklon arrived late in a Rolls-Royce Phantom towing a covered trailer. He exited by the back door only after the driver pulled open his door. Pulled it open would probably be better. The boy was dressed in the kind of clothing made to appear tattered and well-worn, but anybody with an eye for fashion could recognize the shirt alone was an $8,000 original. His fashion was evocative of the 1,000 designer scarves of Johnny Depp or the ill-fitting linens of Jared Leto. Well-designed tatters, if that could describe a fashion. He smiled at the morning sun and said, Driver, this is where the earth truly bleeds its salt, isn't it? Certainly, sir, the driver mumbled. Will you be requiring my assistance retrieving your motorcycle from the trailer? Certainly not. After all, if I couldn't roll my own bike out of a trailer, how could I ever truly tap into the rebel poet spirit of Che Guevara? The driver paused, raised an eyebrow, and nodded. Naturally, sir. The rest of the afternoon was Martha spent trying to anticipate the rich man's needs when his back was turned. She had to be careful as a ghost, because even simple feelings could shake and shudder the mortal world and scare him off. Sometime in the afternoon, the other two guests she expected turned up in their simple hatchback. They were Mandy and Tiffany, and they had specified that they were celebrating their 10th anniversary and had heard rumors this place was haunted. Apparently, they fancied themselves mediums. Under no circumstances could Martha risk that reputation. This was supposed to be a cozy cottage and not some fearful, shadowy place. Thankfully, the new guests busied themselves with burning a bundle of juniper and waving the smoke about their room. This was fine enough, however, something about their incense smoke really bothered Martha. It repulsed her and stung at her very spirit. So she avoided their room and stuck to dusting upstairs. Sometime in the evening, when the smoke had dispersed from the lower floor, Zekalon had apparently made a dinner. Technically made a dinner, because again, this should have been done by Martha, but time often travels differently for a ghost. And it was a shame too, because it was clear the boy had never much cooked. Why would he have? He was a trust fund kid. The result was a sort of mac and cheese with quote-unquote fresh picked herbs that Martha was reasonably certain were just dandelions and crabgrass from the front lawn. He had seemingly fried the noodles with some water and the wilting bitter greens in a Teflon pan. The result of this ill-advised approach to making mac and cheese was a meal flecked with the dark chips of a non-stick coating from the overheating pan. It was a bitter, mushy slop seasoned with chemical chunks. Tiffany and Mandy accepted the dishes, but upon tasting it, Mandy, a brunette woman with a round, inviting face, said, "Oh, delicious, but before we start, I should make sure nothing haunts the room." Tiffany perked up at this, turned her gaunt but handsome face to her partner, and with a forced smile said, "Oh, yes, you'll be needing our help with that." And the two ladies scurried out of the room, coming back with a bound bundle of herbs each that let off long, fraying threads of pale smoke. They began to move in a kind of dance and chanted words that seemed to be made up. Martha had not seen them do any chanting or dancing when they were alone in their room, so Martha could only gather this was a tactic to delay having to eat the terrible food of Zekalon. Martha would have laughed at the whole scene were it not likely to shake the place in a terrible, terrifying ways. But the smoke, it began to sting again, and Martha finally realized how it was affecting her. She did not understand exactly how, given her ethereal form, but some way, she suddenly knew she would sneeze. She turned to run for the window, holding her arm to her face, but as she passed over the dining table, she could not hold it. As it was with all things stuck between the realms, the sneeze was no mere sneeze. In one shuddering, horrible roar, a deluge of snot shot at the table, tossing away the ladies' meals, untouched as they were, and turning Zekalon's half-empty plate up against his face. There was a moment of silence when everyone began to scream. Instinctively, Martha tried to calm them, but as before, it only came through as cacophonic whispers that tore at their sanities. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," Martha said, and Tiffany fell to the ground, holding her ears, looking up with wild eyes, crying out, "What terrible curses are you uttering, spirit?" Mandy grabbed her arm and held up an amulet in shifting directions. To Martha's surprise, everyone didn't actually run away after that. Instead, the two ladies talked the terrified boy into joining a seance. Martha had done seances before when she was alive, but this was the first time being on the other side of it. At first, she had resolved to give no further evidence of her presence and thus neglect attending this seance for her. But as it turns out, a seance is something of a spam call. She tried to fold laundry, and their seance was like a ringing in her ears. She tried to polish the fixtures, but the buzz, buzz, buzz of the humming was relentless. She had no choice. After being pestered for the better part of an hour, she finally floated down and said, "How can I help you?" Oh, great and terrible spirit, I ask you now, what binds you to this place? Tiffany said. That's personal, and I would prefer to keep this professional, Martha said with some indignation, though remaining aware of her obligation to be a good host. Everyone at the table sort of stuttered at this. Tiffany continued, what is your profession? Listen, I just need to know if anyone needs anything. I apologize for the incident earlier and any problems. Do you guys like tea in the morning? Martha tried. Spirit, are you bound to host guests forever? Tiffany asked. If that's all, Martha said, dodging the question she feared most. Please remember to give a good rating on the app. I don't know why that makes me laugh, but it makes me laugh every time. If you've enjoyed your visit. Spirit, is there a love you long for us to reach? Tiffany said, reaching in her confusion for something that made sense. Nope, I just hope you all enjoy your visit, and Martha continued. Zeklon finally cut in and said, there are a bunch of dead birds outside, and if you're like a ghost host extraordinaire, how can you not keep dead birds off the lawn? He tisked. I think, sir, Martha said, restraining her rage, your, experiments with the Teflon pan might have killed all the birds over the cabin. So now everything's my fault, Zeklon said with an eye roll. I'm giving this dump 1 star. Ghost, Tiffany added quickly. Do you carry guilt for how your curse has killed the birds above this place? I didn't kill any birds. She seems to be in denial. Maybe this is what keeps her here. Do you carry guilt, Spirit? Tiffany whispered loudly. I would if I killed all those birds, Zeklon muttered. Well, Martha shouted and shook the windows. Then I guess you must feel tremendous guilt because your terrible cooking killed all the nice birds. And as one might expect, this shuddering, terrifying outburst finally ran off the guests, and their later reviews reflected their terror, informing Martha that she would have to host another year. Ain says, I'm a bit jealous of the way your writing sounds and the flow of it. Well, that's very kind of you to say, Ain. I will say I have written for a long time, and I've taken some classes, so it's not like I just stumbled into it, but nonetheless, I will take the compliment. I guess all I'm trying to say is I think anybody could learn it if they so choose. Gia says, I agree, Ain. How does he do it with all of her interjections? Your interjections are nothing. Your interjections are helpful. I mean, I honestly, what it does do is it sort of sometimes degrades the grammar of things because there's a lot of other stuff to think about. But what it mostly does for me is actually helps the flow, because when I get stuck on something and I ask you guys, you have ideas, right? When you're writing alone, if you get stuck on something, you're stuck for a while. Ain, I really appreciate you coming by, and your suggestions were a lot of fun, helped inform the ending. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Also, Genera, thanks for dropping by, and Holly's House, and of course, Witchery. Thank you, everyone, for dropping by. Sorry I went a little long this time. But for those who are probably... I imagine I've lost most of the audience at this point, but for those who are stuck around to the end, thank you so much. Thank you very much, GS. They said they loved it. As per usual, I'll be back on Tuesday, and remember, this Tuesday I'm reading the entirety of Carmilla, a gothic vampire tale, which is the longest Fireside Fairy Tales I'm ever going to have done. We'll see how that goes. It's a story I really wanted to read. It's 24,000 words, though, and we normally read less than 10,000 on the show. So we'll see how it goes. But if you're not doing anything Halloween night and you want to hang out by the fire and listen to an old a vampire story that predates Bram Stoker's Dracula, then come hang out on Halloween on Tuesday night. Other than that, I hope you have a good weekend of many Halloween parties if that's something that your area really celebrates. JS says, nice seeing everyone. Have a great night. Nice seeing all of you folks. And as I always say at the end of the day, because I have new people, I need to emphasize that this is sort of just a thing I say at the end. Don't take it personally. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.